Welcome again. In my last video, I explained how we become chronically ill when we're subjected to high levels of stress or, in acute cases, trauma. Today, I want to look at some of the growing evidence regarding the extent of our ability to consciously control what were previously believed to be unconscious physical reactions to external events through neuroplasticity and the mindful engagement of the prefrontal cortex of the brain. This means that the future can be different from the past. We can learn to reprogram our brains and their neural attractor pathways, changing our reactions to stress and avoiding being trapped in trauma. Frequently, the quickest and most long-lasting way of doing this is through accessing memories held at a cellular level within the physical body, rather than using talking therapies which access the brain, and particularly the vocal left brain. It tends to tell the story over and over. But until the autonomic nervous system's response to traumatic experience are accessed within our body, the old patterns remain stuck in the limbic brain, which can only be reprogrammed through different physical experiences. Dr. Dan Siegel is currently clinical professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine. He's the co-founding co-director of the Mindful Awareness Research Center. He has extensively documented recent research demonstrating that although our neurobiology is programmed by our past, it's possible for the brain to change structurally and develop new neural connections that can allow us to escape the prison of the old limbic attractor pathways. Central to this is the concept of neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the brain to stimulate new neurons to grow, create and strengthen connections between neurons, and increase the myelin sheathing along the axonal lengths of certain neurons, which increases the speed at which electrical impulses travel from cell to cell within our central nervous system. A new technology called diffusion tensor imaging allows observation of how these myelinated circuits remodel themselves during spatial learning and memory tasks. And it's been observed that microstructural changes, that is neuroplasticity, can be seen after as little as 2 hours of training in a new task. So how can we encourage positive neuroplasticity in a therapeutic setting or even by ourselves? Alan Shore's therapeutic model focuses on what he describes as widening the windows of affect tolerance, gradually allowing the client to experience what previously would have been seen as stressful and threatening within a safe space held by the therapist. This sort of space is what I call a temenos, and it's one method of allowing a patient to switch from a state of stress, fear, being objectified or even unseen, to a state of relaxation, hope, acknowledgement and acceptance. The patient is encouraged to switch from being controlled by stress hormones released by their sympathetic nervous system to being controlled by the ventral vagal branch of the parasympathetic system, which allows the body's own immune system to switch back on to fight infection or disease. At the same time, the patient is encouraged to engage in myelination and positive neuroplasticity. Peter Levine's model of working with the body-mind is another way of inducing neuroplasticity and myelination. Again, it's dependent on a therapist holding a safe enough space for the patient to experience frightening physical sensations without shutting down, so that new neural pathways can be activated. Physiologically, if we can become conscious of tracking our bodily sensations in response to external events via the prefrontal cortex, we can learn to modify the emotional responses from the amygdala and decide on a different course of action. Siegel's mindsight process is entirely dependent on the fact that we can sense, shape and modify the flow of energy and information within our own lives and in our interactions with others. This can allow us to face previously avoided emotions, knowing that we have the capacity to transform them into tolerated emotions with a different physical response from before. A third and much more ancient way of inducing neuroplasticity is coming back into vogue with the recent medical understanding of the body-mind connections. This, of course, is meditation, which can be done without any therapist present, and hence it's arguably the most self-empowering and autonomous medicine of all. Studies on the impact of meditation by the US federal government's Office of Alternative Medicine and Dr. Herbert Benson of the Harvard Medical School show many benefits. In particular, meditation has a profound effect upon 3 key indicators of aging: hearing ability, blood pressure, and the vision of close objects. Long-term meditators experience 80% less heart disease, 50% less cancer than non-meditators. And those who practice transcendental meditation have a lower biological age compared to their chronological age than those who do not meditate. Those meditating for more than 5 years were found to be physiologically 12 years younger than non-meditating counterparts. Again, this results from the connections between our thoughts, our emotions, and the endocrine system. The conscious act of meditation increases blood flow to the brain and increases activity in the prefrontal cortex. It shifts the cortex and the amygdala into a relaxed alpha brainwave pattern so that they send a message to the endocrine system to release the calming hormones melatonin and serotonin, while reducing production of the stress hormone cortisol. The nervous system is dominated by the parasympathetic branch, which favours the organs and glands of immunity, and you reach the ideal condition for healing. Consciously intending to reprogram our neural networks is stepping into true self-responsibility, self-empowerment and choice, knowing we can change our mental, emotional and physical responses to life events away from the old conditioned patterns of the limbic attractors. Taking things a step further, because the prefrontal cortex is self-aware, it can observe any programmed behaviour that we're engaged in, evaluate that behaviour and consciously decide to change the program. As Dr. Bruce Lipton says, the conscious mind's capacity to override the subconscious mind's pre-programmed behaviours is the foundation of free will. These solutions demonstrate that we do have significant control over what's happening in our brains, that we have choice, and if we choose to accept self-responsibility and work to achieve a better life and better health, we can no longer blame others for our misfortunes or unhappiness. If we choose to be victims and tell ourselves that change is impossible, then of course it will be. But once we accept that we've got choice, no matter how depressed we feel, no matter how bad our lives have been until now, things can be different in the future. We can react in different ways, set up new neural networks based on different beliefs about ourselves and what we are capable of. There is always hope.